I wore a wedding dress at a wedding. My cousin Ashley was getting married last month, and she'd asked me to be her maid of honor. I was super excited because we grew up together, and she's basically like my sister. The wedding was supposed to be this gorgeous outdoor thing at her fiancé's family's vineyard. Weeks before the wedding, Ashley calls me sobbing. Turns out her mom had been hiding the fact that they were basically broke. Her parents had promised to pay for the wedding, but had been lying about their finances for months. The dress shop was demanding full payment, or they wouldn't release Ashley's wedding dress. Ashley had already paid them like $3,000, but still owed another $1,500. Her fiancé's family was already paying for everything else, and she was too embarrassed to ask them for more money. She was talking about canceling the whole thing, or just going to City Hall in jeans. I couldn't let that happen. So I did something probably really stupid. I went to the dress shop and paid off the rest myself. But here's where it gets weird. The lady at the shop mixed up the orders and gave me Ashley's dress instead of just releasing it to her. I tried calling Ashley, but her phone was going straight to voicemail. The wedding was the next day, and I was freaking out. I drove to her house, but nobody was home. Turns out they'd all gone to some family dinner thing and weren't coming back until late. The morning of the wedding, I'm standing in Ashley's bridal suite at the venue with her dress in my hands. She's having a total meltdown because she thinks her dress is gone forever. Her mom is crying, her bridesmaids are panicking, and Ashley is talking about wearing her mom's old dress from the 80s. That's when I pulled out her actual dress. Ashley literally screamed and started crying happy tears. She hugged me so hard I thought she might crack my ribs. But then we realized we had another problem. While I was explaining everything to Ashley, my bridesmaid dress had somehow gotten completely soaked. One of the other bridesmaids had knocked over this huge vase of flowers, and the water went everywhere. My dress was dripping wet, and there was no way it would dry in time. Ashley looked at me and then at the closet where they had a backup dress, a second wedding dress her mom had bought just in case. It was almost identical to Ashley's, but slightly different style. Ashley grabbed my hands and was like, "Please just wear it. You literally saved my wedding." So there I was walking down the aisle in a full wedding dress while Ashley wore her actual wedding dress. The guests were so confused. I could see people whispering and pointing. Ashley's grandmother actually asked if it was some kind of double wedding situation. During the ceremony, the photographer kept accidentally taking pictures of me instead of Ashley because I was standing right behind her and we were both in white. The officiant even got confused at one point and almost asked if I took Ashley to be my wife. At the reception, random relatives kept congratulating me and asking where my groom was. One of Ashley's aunts cornered me for like 20 minutes, asking about my wedding plans and when I was due, because apparently white dress equals bride or pregnant in her mind. The best part was when Ashley's new mother-in-law saw me and completely freaked out. She started yelling about how inappropriate it was and how I was trying to upstage the bride. Ashley had to physically get between us and explain the whole situation. But honestly, Ashley was glowing all day and kept thanking me every 5 minutes. Her wedding photos turned out amazing. Even with me accidentally photobombing half of them in another wedding story, we already divided everything. My brother sneered. "You weren't invited for a reason. I own your wife now," the lawyer cleared his throat and said coldly. Actually, his name is the only one in the will. My brother's smile vanished as the room fell. Deadly silent. Chapter 1, The Family That Chose Sides. The mansion was silent when I arrived. Too silent. A place that once echoed with laughter and shared memories now felt colder than a graveyard. My mother had just passed away, and this was the reading of her will. But no one had called me directly. I only found out through an old neighbor who saw the obituary in the paper. I wasn't surprised. After all, ever since I stepped back from the family business to follow a more humble path, starting my own small auto shop, marrying for love rather than status, I had become the disappointment. My older brother Derek, on the other hand, had become the crown jewel. Sleek suits, fake smiles, a penthouse in LA, and a reputation that smelled like money but wryer of lies. I walked into the legal office alone. No warm greetings, just Derek, seated smugly in a tailored blazer, sipping espresso like he owned the world. My wife Claire sat beside him. My wife, ex-wife now, though the paperwork had barely settled. She didn't even look away from her phone when I walked in. I ignored them both and took my seat. The lawyer, Mr. Coleman, adjusted his glasses and looked over the documents. But before he could speak, Derek leaned forward, voice dripping with condescension. "We already divided everything," he said with a smirk. "You weren't invited for a reason. I own your wife now." And soon I'll own what's left of this house, too. Claire chuckled softly and placed a manicured hand on his arm. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I just looked over at Mr. Coleman. And that's when it happened. The lawyer cleared his throat, placed the will on the table, and said in a voice as cold as steel, Actually, his name is the only one in the will. You could hear the oxygen get sucked out of the room. Derrick's smirk died on his face. Claire froze. What? Derrick hissed. That's impossible, Claire whispered. But Mr. Coleman simply turned the wheel toward them and pointed. Everything, the mansion, the stocks, the family business, the bank accounts, everything is left to Ethan. Not you, Mr. Derrick. I leaned back slowly, crossing my arms, watching their entire world crumble in real time. It was only the beginning. Chapter 2. The Paper Trail of Truth. Derrick was seething. His hands clenched the edge of the table, knuckles white. Claire leaned closer to him, whispering frantic questions, her voice a panicked hiss. But I could see it clearly now, the fear creeping into both of their eyes, the kind of fear that only comes when your lies, arrogance, and betrayals finally hit a wall of truth. Mr. Coleman remained calm as ever. Your mother updated her will 2 years ago. Everything in her estate, including the business shares and the main residence, was transferred solely to Ethan. There were multiple witnesses. It's all legal, binding, and irreversible. But why? Derrick barked. I'm the one who stayed. I took care of everything. I raised an eyebrow. You mean took over everything? Manipulated, lied, and controlled everyone. You didn't take care of our mother. You took care of her money. Claire narrowed her eyes at me. This is petty revenge, isn't it? I chuckled. You think I knew about this? I only found out 5 minutes ago. Remember, I wasn't even invited. But the truth was, I had suspected something. 2 years ago, I visited Mom quietly after hearing she was sick. Derrick didn't know. We spent a weekend talking about everything. My childhood, our broken family, her regrets, and how sad she was watching me get pushed out of my own bloodline. She told me something then. One day when I'm gone, you'll see. I didn't forget you, Ethan. I just waited for the right time to set things straight. At the time, I thought it was just a mother's comfort. Now I realized it was a promise. The documents speak. Mr. Coleman pulled out additional folders. Ethan has full controlling shares of the company. Derrick, your salary and position were provisional, not contractual. Effective immediately, you're removed from the board. Derrick stood up red-faced. You can't do this. But Coleman didn't flinch. It's not me doing it. Your mother did it, and now your brother owns the company. Claire looked at Derrick in disbelief. Wait, so you're broke? He didn't answer. He just stormed out, shoving a chair on the way, and then I spoke. As I stood up, I dropped one more thing on the table. A manila envelope. Claire frowned. What's that? A reminder, I said, of what loyalty is supposed to look like. Inside were printed photos, her and Derrick together, long before the divorce. Time-stamped, dated, in my house, and a paternity test for my youngest daughter. Her face went ghost white. I never meant save it, I said calmly. I don't want apologies. I just want you to watch what comes next because now everything was mine and I was just getting started. Chapter 3. The Echoes of Deception. The silence in the lawyer's office was heavy. Outside, the autumn wind scraped dry leaves across the pavement. Inside, my heart beat with the rhythm of justice finally served. But this wasn't just about property or money. It was about identity, dignity, years of being treated like a placeholder in my own life. Now everything had shifted. Claire's collapse. Claire slowly sank back into her chair, her face pale as the documents and photos on the table seemed to burn into her skin. She kept looking between me and the envelope, trying to speak, but failing. You had this all along? She asked. I nodded. For almost a year, why didn't you use it in court? I leaned in slightly, because I wanted to see how far you'd go. Whether you'd steal custody, whether you'd lie about the house, you passed every test by failing all of them. Her lip trembled. What happens now? I stood up and straightened my jacket. Now you'll hear from my lawyer. Custody will be revisited. Your alimony temporary at best. And the man you destroyed your marriage for. I smirked. He just lost everything too. Derrick's descent. I didn't even need to follow Derrick. He spiraled all on his own. Later that day, his assistant called me, yes, me, to ask if I was aware of Derrick's breakdown at the office. Apparently, he'd tried to strong-arm an investor who had seen the news about the ownership transfer. When they refused to take his calls, Derek smashed a glass wall with a chair. That was his last day at the company. His access was revoked, his credit cards frozen, and his golden boy image gone. The call that changed everything. That night, I got a call from an unexpected number. "Mr. Ethan," the voice said, "this is Judge Halverson, Family Court Division." I froze. "The judge from our custody trial. I've reviewed the new evidence forwarded by your legal team. I'd like to schedule an emergency hearing to revisit custody arrangements." "Frankly, sir, I believe you've been gravely wronged." Claire had filed for full custody on the grounds of emotional instability, ironically using my grief after Mom's death against me. But now that her long-term affair and the paternity test were part of the official record, it was all crumbling. A fire rekindled. That weekend, I returned to Mom's old house, my new home now. In the basement, beside the old furnace, I found the leather-bound journal she used to keep. Inside, written in her soft cursive, "If you're reading this, Ethan, then it means they tried to take everything. But I saw you. I always saw you, and I trust you to carry this family forward, not with money, but with integrity." I closed the book with tears in my eyes. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. Chapter 4, The Custody Reversal in the Final Blow Courtroom. Round 2, 3 weeks later, I stood before the same judge who had once granted Claire full custody of our children. But this time was different. My lawyer, armed with a binder of fresh evidence, the affair timeline, the paternity test, hidden asset transfers, witness statements, laid it all out like a carefully orchestrated symphony. Claire sat across from me, tight-lipped and pale. Derek was absent. Rumor had it he had checked himself into a private rehab facility, claiming stress-induced exhaustion. Convenient. Then the judge leaned forward and said what I had longed to hear. "Mr. Ethan, in light of new revelations, this court hereby awards sole custody to you. Supervised visitation will be granted to Ms. Claire upon review." I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just closed my eyes and exhaled. The kids come home. When I pulled into my driveway later that evening, both of my children, Ellie and Max, were already on the porch waiting with suitcases. Ellie ran into my arms first, tears streaking her face. "Dad?" I didn't know how to say it, but I never wanted to stay with her. I just didn't have a choice. Max, younger, nodded quietly and handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a crude drawing, a house with 3 stick figures inside. Me, Ellie, and Max at the top in crayon. Home. That drawing now sits framed on my desk. Derek's last stand. While I rebuilt our lives with quiet resolve, Derek tried one last desperate move. He filed a defamation suit, claiming I had intentionally destroyed his business reputation. But it didn't go far. His former assistant testified under oath about his rage issues, embezzlement, and most damning, how Claire used her access to my private financials to support his ventures. Their web of deceit collapsed. The court not only dismissed his case, it opened a formal investigation into his financial records. The golden boy was now radioactive. The letter revisited one quiet night. After tucking the kids into bed, I sat beside the safe again. Inside was the letter from my mother, the one that had started it all. "Ethan, I know this world hasn't been fair to you. But that's because you were never meant for an average life. You were meant to build one from the ruins. And when they try to break you, remember this. Some people build empires from ash. Be one of them." I folded it carefully and put it back. I had already begun. Chapter 5, The Empire Rebuilt. Ohio Roots, California Fire. Ohio had been a place of ruin for me. The basement where I first collapsed after losing everything. But it had also become the place where I found the letter, the safe, and the truth about my strength. Now it was becoming the base of something new. Using what remained of my mother's hidden inheritance, and the quiet contacts she'd once referenced in that mysterious letter, I invested in 3 things: a small but promising cybersecurity startup, a foreclosed manufacturing facility I converted into a co-working hub, my self-therapy, personal growth, and rebuilding the father my kids could count on. Within a year, those bets started paying off. The man who replaced me was replaced. Back in California, Claire had burned through the last of her savings. Derek was gone, his accounts were frozen. His investors had vanished, and his name trended online only in scandal forums. Eventually, Claire had to return to work, but now she was just another name on a resume, one with a messy court history and tabloid baggage. She reached out once. "The kids miss me. Maybe we could talk." I left the message unread. News and poetic justice. One morning, a headline splashed across the news. Ex-startup mogul Derek Masters arrested in federal sting operation. Turns out Derek had been dabbling in crypto scams using stolen investor identities, including mine. The feds had been watching him since I filed the defamation countersuit. Claire's world shattered again, but this time the implosion was permanent. I didn't laugh. I just poured my coffee and went back to my desk. Full circle. Eventually, I sold my mother's Ohio home, the one with the basement that had once felt like a prison, and moved to a new home with my children near a lake. One day, Ellie asked, "Dad, are you ever going to date again?" I smiled and said, "Maybe, but right now I've got everything I ever needed." You too. Chapter 6, Legacy Redefined. The safe's final secret. Months after I'd rebuilt my life, one small envelope from the basement safe still sat unopened, sealed tightly with wax and marked only with my mother's handwriting. When you're ready to know everything, one quiet evening, with the kids asleep upstairs and the lake reflecting the last gold of the sunset, I opened it. Inside was a black and white photograph of a man I'd never seen before standing next to my mother, both in military uniform. On the back, she'd written, "Your father was never just a mechanic. They hunted him for what he knew. If you're reading this, they may come for you next, but you're smarter. You always were." Below that, a list of names, bank accounts, off-the-G grid contact points. And finally, I didn't just leave you money. I left you tools. Suddenly, everything. The safe, the hidden cash, the letter that began, "If you're reading this, they finally found you," made sense. My mother hadn't just prepared for my survival. She'd prepared me to win. Ethan 2.0. With the resources from the safe, I launched a foundation, the Whitlock Initiative, focused on helping men and fathers who'd lost everything in corrupt family court battles. I gave free legal counsel, emotional support access, and financial microgrants. The first man we helped broke down in tears on a call. He said, "You gave me hope when even my kids didn't recognize me anymore." That's when I knew I'd turned the pain into something powerful. The final encounter. Claire eventually showed up. She stood on the porch one snowy afternoon, shivering. No makeup, no smirk, just a broken woman with nowhere left to go. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know what I was doing. I lost everything." I didn't raise my voice. Didn't slam the door. I just looked her in the eyes and said, "I loved you even when I had nothing, and you spit on that. Now I have everything, and I've never been more free of you." Then I closed the door. A new father, a new man. Ellie once asked me if I missed how things used to be. I smiled. "No," I said. "I was a ghost in my own life. Now I'm fully alive." We roasted marshmallows by the fire that night. I watched my kids laugh safe and warm. The world outside finally quiet. And I whispered to myself, this is the legacy they can never take. Epilogue. Some men lose everything and break. Others lose everything and rebuild better. And when betrayal tries to destroy you, let your silence be your strategy. Let your healing be your revenge. Let your legacy be the answer. Was this revenge perfectly justified, or should the storm have raged harder? Drop your verdict below. I read every single one. Hit like if you crave justice and share this story with someone who needs its fire.